It is an honor beyond measure, not only to be here amongst you this evening, but also to have been given the honor by Dada to inaugurate this magnificent work of love. I'm absolutely grateful, as I said, to the entire team that they chose me. It is an honor I can't describe. And it's very rare for me, it's very frequent for my wife though, but to be lost for words. I'm in a dilemma because yes, I am lost for words, but I promise that I'll give a lecture of 1 hour, so I cannot be lost for words. But please take it for me that, as I said, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for giving me this opportunity and honor to be here this evening. Some advance towards greatness, others return to it. We Indians do both. And I think there is no finer example than this building, the resplendent building that's been renovated. No finer example than that to prove, yes, it is true. While we do want to and are advancing towards greatness, we also want to return to what was our greatness so that we don't forget it. And in many ways, one may ask at this juncture the question, why is it important? Why is returning to greatness important? Why isn't it enough for us to just advance towards greatness? I believe it is important because nations weaken, as I say, not because of their past, but rather by how they are taught it. And the tragedy is, and that also proves why building a complex such as this is important, is because a few thousand kilometers away, an entire complex that had 100 times knowledge as this hall does and its luminaries do, that had 9 million books, and that burned for 3 continuous months, is also our history. But more important than that, what is also our history is that the man who burnt Nalanda, 9 million books, can you imagine the extent of knowledge that went along with it? The man who burnt it, we have honored him by naming the closest railway station to Nalanda on his name, Bakhtiyarpur. And the reason for that is that we, somewhere along the way in our race to advance towards greatness, we've forgotten our past. And places like this, complex like this, would instill in the younger generation, and I include, sir, you in the younger generation. You are an absolute legend, and instill in this generation to, while advancing towards greatness, Viksit Bharat as we all call it, to not forget what made us great once. And that is why buildings like this is important. And that is why I thank from the bottom of my heart everyone associated with restoring it to its past glory. When I talk about thanking people, I do not have enough time to thank all the people who are associated with this. But I would really like to begin with thanking the architects for making this once again a great place for scholars to come, and also heralding the tradition that we as Bharatiyas and Indians hold so close to us, because so many of you might have visited Sri Padmanabha Temple in Kerala. But not many of you know that the first sculpture that you see as you enter the Sanctum Sanctorum is not of the lords, the gods and the goddesses, is of the family of the architect. That's the first sculpture you see. You see the architect of Sri Padmanabha Swami, see his wife, and you see his little kid. And that is what our tradition is, because the person who teaches us becomes our guru for time immemorial to come. And that is why I would like to begin by thanking the architect. Thank you very much, sir, for giving us this piece of history and future. And I would like to thank Mr. Joshi, of course, for making all this possible, the entire team of Mandal, and of course, Pradeep Dada. Now, about Pradeep Dada, what can I say that I haven't already heard or that I haven't already said? Suffice it to say that I believe nations become great not when its politicians become great, but when its great become politicians. And I pine for the day when this nation would have 543 member of parliaments as Pradeep Dada. We don't even have one. And of course, with 33% reservation for Win, I think it's becoming a bit difficult to have 543 Pradeep Dadas. We need 272 Didis as well. But you see what I'm saying? There are people who don't vie for power, for position, for money. And yet those are the people who are going to make this country great. So let's not forget that. Thank you very much, Pradeep Dada. While talking about this invitation that Pradeep Dada bestowed upon me, I did warn him. I said, Dada, look, there is a problem. Yes, I don't mind coming. It would be an honor. But the fact is, I'm always invited to any place once. That is my issue. हर जगह मैं एक ही बार बुलाया जाता हूँ. And I gave him a couple of examples. Around this time last year, there was a debate in Kolkata I was invited to. And the topic was media as watchdog. And I went there and my turn came and I said, media as watchdog? What are you guys talking about? Media is a lapdog. You guys are stooges. You are sold out people who only publish what your masters, your politicians ask you to publish. And you never publish what you're told not to publish. You're not the arm of democracy anymore, the pillar, exalted pillar of democracy. You are sold out. You have a price. And the worst culprit is the Telegraph of Kolkata. And you only publish what Mamta Didi tells you to publish. And you are not a watchdog, I'm sorry, you're a lapdog. I didn't know the debate was sponsored by Telegraph. I ran from there to the airport with people telling me, sir, you have 15 minutes before your flight. Sir, you have 10 minutes before your flight. Finally, luckily, I could take the flight. Then, about 7 months ago, there was this event in a university in Delhi. And the title was Politics and Beyond. And my turn came and I said, look, aren't we all tired bashing the politicians day in and day out? And I do it most days and most nights. I think time has come for us to concentrate on the other arm of democracy, the one which we don't talk about often, we don't bash often. And I'm talking of the judiciary, because truth be told, nobody talks about the judiciary, including the judiciary itself. There is nepotism, there is all sorts of I scratch my back, your back, you scratch mine. There is sycophancy, there is collegium system, judges don't want others to elect them, there is no democracy, there is corruption from top to bottom, including 9 Supreme Court judges who have said higher judiciary is corrupt. 34% of all High Court judges' positions are lying vacant in the country. 21% of all judicial positions in the country are lying vacant. We have 50 million pending cases, more than the population of South Korea. In fact, with the pace with which we are dealing with these cases, it would take us 323 years to clear the backlog. There are some cases, 133,000, that are more than 35 years old. 250,000 cases that are pending deal with rape and POXO cases. I mean, their corruption is rife. And you have so much of inaction that only 10% of all judges have declared their assets publicly. You have a situation where 1,600 complaints of corrupt judges have been forwarded to the Supreme Court in the last 5 years, and not a single impeachment of a judge has happened in our history, in Indian history. Not a single judge has been impeached. This is the current situation. 71% of all Indian prisoners are under trials. They have not been given bail. From every day you hear less judges. Well, the reason for that is we have only 20 judges per million Indian population. In America, it is 150 judges per million population. So it is time we decided to leave the politicians for a bit and start criticizing the arm of democracy that needs to be criticized. And 55% of all judges in India are related to higher judiciary. In fact, in one Punjab and Haryana High Court, 32% of everyone working there is related to each other. Judges, lawyers, judicial, workers. So I said, this is the time that is ripe to criticize and bash the living daylights out of judges. And I went back to the dais, and the person sitting next to me was the Chief Justice of Allahabad High Court. I forgot I had come in my car. I forgot my car and I took an Uber and ran. So I told Dada, look, I'm warning you. This is the say. He said, don't worry, just come. But in deciding the topic, that was another quandary, because it's such a hallowed place that oozes history. I did wonder, what should I talk about? Should I talk about our historical past? Or as we are at an inflection point, should I talk about from these hallowed portals, how do we look at progressing towards future? And I've decided the latter. So I'm going to talk about something that's very close to me, but I'm afraid we don't discuss it very often. And I've titled the talk as From Treadmill to Travelator, India Towards 2047, because I think, ladies and gentlemen, this is the right podium for me to talk about what is in everyone's mind about Viksit Bharat by 2047, when we finish 100 years of our modern Indian independence. And I thought I'll talk about, in the next 45, 50 minutes or so, whatever time I have allotted to me, plus additional 30 seconds, the fact as to if we are to reach there, perhaps not if, but when we are to reach there, how would we identify the things that we need to do from here till then? The so-called fundamentals, the so-called core of what success means for a nation, for a people, for a state. And I believe somewhere along the line, in this euphoria of Viksit Bharat 2047, we kind of relegated understanding the fundamentals of success to the backstage. And perhaps that's understandable, because as the adage goes, success hides failures. And if you believe you are on a path to success, you don't want to talk about your failures. And if you're a politician, you never want to talk about your failures. In fact, you have a politician that's got 99 seats out of 543, he believes he's got 99 out of 100. But the fact of the matter is, unless we identify what the core of the success is, unless we also realistically see the glass, whether it is half empty or half full, I'm afraid we are not going to see an age where the glass would be brimming or overflowing. But having said that, I think one of the aspects of talking about this, I'll just start this, please. Yeah. Talking about fundamentals of success is to first define whether we have been successful or not. And there are, of course, opinions, there are conflict opinions, and some would say, yes, we have been relatively successful. Well, there are parameters that define what a success is. And if you were to, for example, look at what our position was when we gained independence in 1947, sure enough, there are a few parameters that we can discuss. For example, in 1947, our life expectancy was 32 years. 32 years when we gained independence. Today it is 76 years. So yes, we've been successful. The graph is moving towards the right direction, in the right direction. In 1947, our literacy rate was 12%. Today it is upwards of 86%. In 1947, our poverty rate was 71%. Today it is 4.5%. And the most troubling, in 1947, our infant mortality rate was 160, which meant that out of 1,000 babies that were born when we attained independence, 160 did not live to see 1 year. Today it is 24, and in some states like Kerala, it has surpassed even European countries' IMR like 6 or 7. So yes, we've been relatively successful, you could say. And if you were to scrunch the timeline even further, not 75 years, but 10 years, and assess us, then I would say not just relatively successful, we've been stunningly successful. Let me give you a few parameters. In 2014, the percentage of Indian population that was multidimensionally poor, that's the new metric that is used, multidimensional poverty that assesses our health, wealth, prosperity, HDI indices, and so many other things. 29% of Indian population was multidimensionally poor 10 years ago. Today it is 11%. In the last 10 years, we've pulled 250 million Indians out of multidimensional poverty. I would say that is stunning success. In 2014, our GDP per capita was $1,500 US. Today it is $2,600 US. In 2014, our foreign exchange reserves were $300 billion. Today it is $700 billion, more than double. So yes, in 2014, 10 years ago, we had 5 cities that had metros. Today we have 20 cities that had metros. 10 years ago, we had 74 airports. Today we have 148 airports. 21,000 kilometers of railway lines were electrified in 2014. Now it is 63,000 kilometers of railway line. And 60 years, before 10 years, the length of highways that we had made, in the last 10 years, we made half of that length, which is spectacular. That is one of the reasons why I don't call Mr. Nitin Gadkari as human. He is an alien. Only an alien can achieve that, what he has. And he is alien in more ways than one, because I saw his podcast the other day and he was talking about, he was going for a bariatric surgery. He himself talked about this, and half an hour before he was to go for this surgery, he had 5 plates of chola bhaturas. So only an alien can think of that, not even a Punjabi. Other parameters, for example, 2014, our electronics exports were $7 billion. Today it is $23 billion. So many other come out. For example, for those of you who are in wealth management, you would appreciate this. In 2014, our assets under management in mutual funds were 9 lakh crores. Today it is 63 lakh crores. And the most heartening of it, in 2014, we had 350 startups. Today we have 118,000 startups. So yes, not just relative success, we've had stunning success. And if you were to scrunch the timeline even further, not 75 years, not 10 years, but the last 1 year, then we've had spectacular success. Let me give you a few data points. Our monthly GST collections have been the highest ever, 2.1 lakh crores. Number of vehicle sales have been the highest ever at 4.2 million units. Our exports have been the highest ever at $780 billion. Number of jobs created have been the highest ever at 47 million. Our PMI manufacturing has been the highest ever at 59. Our number of income taxpayers have been the highest ever at 68 million. Our central government debt to GDP ratio has been at a 5-year low of 54%. Our inflation has been at a 5-year low of 3.5%. It increased a little bit to 4%, but I'm talking about the last 1 year. Our Gini coefficient, index of inequality, has been at a 5-year low of 0.29. And the most heartening of all, our Sensex has reached the highest ever at 85,000. It is decreased a little bit because of global uncertainties, but I'm talking about the last 1 year. So from relative success to stunning success to spectacular success, we've seen it all, and many of you in the audience will be thinking, what's this fellow talking about? He's always looking at glass half empty, glass half full. Look, we're spectacularly successful. Let's not talk about our failures. We are a successful country. We are going to attain Viksit Bharat at 2047. I say, well, that's all very well. But it is also true that yes, if we have been spectacularly successful, stunningly successful, then why is it that till today, right now, 300 million Indians survive on 60 rupees a day? Why is it still 150 million Indian children are out of school? Why is it that today 34% of all Indian children under 5 are chronically stunted and malnourished? Why is it that today 20% of all poor children have never been vaccinated? Why is it today that 8 million children are still involved in child labor? Why is it that today 18 million Indians are still involved in bonded labor? Why is it that today 70% of India does not have internet connectivity? Why is it that today only 2% of adult Indians pay tax? In the UK it is 66%. Why is it today that our rank in the World Hunger Index is 111? And why is it that today our rank in GDP per capita is 136th, lower even than Sri Lanka and a few months ago Bangladesh? So clearly we have had success, spectacular success, but the other part is also true. It indeed is a game of two halves, and unless we realize what are the factors that have not only given us success, but have also given us this spectacular, earth-shaking, depressing failure, I'm afraid we again would be at an inflection point about to take off, because we indeed are. We are at an inflection point, about to take off. But my worry is, if we don't realize what is stopping us, then I'm afraid it's going to be like the captain saying, ladies and gentlemen, I've detected a snag in the plane and I'm going to park the plane after taxiing on the runway to a hangar. I don't want that to happen, because we've seen inflection points before, and inflection points come once in a generation. Sometimes they even skip a generation. The last inflection point that India had was 1990 economic liberalization. I don't want us to miss this inflection point. And I think the reason why, if we don't realize the core fundamentals of what success are, if we don't understand them, if we don't take corrective measures, I'm afraid Viksit Bharat at 2047 is a very long shot. And I'll tell you the reason why we are ignoring this is because I believe that we as a state and we as a people are a confused lot about what our role should be. We don't understand what is the role of the state. We don't understand what is the role of a citizen. And I think in the coming half an hour or so, I want to delineate that, because I think that's very important. And let me begin by asking a very simple question to the audience. If I were to ask you, can you name me one state or government policy since independence in the last 75 years, just one policy implemented by the state, thought of by the state and implemented by the state, that has helped our economy grow the most? What would you say? Anyone? Just one policy. Anyone? Please feel free to. Liberalization, that's the most correct answer, economic liberalization. Had we not achieved economic liberalization, had we not liberalized our economy in 1990, I wouldn't be standing here, we wouldn't be where we are right now. Just to tell you that when I talk about our foreign exchange reserves right now, $700 billion, at that point of time, they dwindled down to $3 billion. We mortgaged 67 tons of our gold. We loaded it onto ships. The ships were about to park in England. And then we had the economic liberalization. So yes, absolutely. Anything else? GST, yes, absolutely. GST has been, I'll just ring up Ms. Sita Raman. Somebody likes here tax. Yes, your address, please, I'll tell you. No, anything else? Digital India, I mean, absolutely correct. Digital India is one of the pillars of taking this country forward that has helped our economy grow the most. Anything else? Solar energy, absolutely. In fact, I forgot to mention that data point. 2014, our solar capacity installed solar capacity was 2 gigawatts. Today it is 100 gigawatts in 10 years. So yes, absolutely. But you see, all of you have given the correct answers. All of you. And yes, but you see, I had framed the question in such a way that all the answers are related to finance and economy. What if I were to tell you that the one policy of the state that has helped the economy grow the most is not related to economy or finance at all? It is the midday meal scheme. Every single day, 130 million Indian children go to school, every single day. And they go to school because their parents send them to school so they can get good education, they can get wiser, but more important than that, they can get a nutritious meal which is mandated by our Supreme Court to be of a minimum of 430 kilocalories. So they get healthier as well. And the person who thought of this never even went to school, K. Kamaraj. So next time, people in our socio-economic strata think that, oh, we need a politician who is a graduate, postgraduate, doctor, engineer, scientist, we need someone. Here is a man who thought of this, implemented this, and has helped our economy grow the most, K. Kamaraj, and he never even went to school. And that should be, I believe, the role of the state. The role of the state is to create a healthier, wealthier, wiser, more adaptable, more flexible workforce, labor force. The role of the state is not to use that labor force, which is what this state has been doing, which is what all the socialist economies from Soviet Union to Cuba to Venezuela have been doing. The role of the state is to create this labor force and to give it to you, the wealth creators, for you to use that labor force. And this right here is the confusion that shrouds the state as to what its role should be. And now that I have divided the role of the state into 4 parameters, healthier, wealthier, wiser, more adaptable labor force, workforce, let me go through them one by one to give you examples of how shrouded in confusion our state is as far as fulfilling this role is. Let me begin with the 4th one first. More adaptable, more flexible labor force. Well, did you know that 44% of Indian workforce, which is about 600 million, our workforce hovers from around, some say 585 million, some say 615, on average 600 million Indians are in the labor force. 44% of that is involved in agriculture, a sector that contributes only 14.5 to 14% to our GDP. From purchase to production, everything is absolutely archaic and medieval. And yet, 250 to 300 million Indians are directly involved in this sector. The tragedy of this sector is that it is contributing year upon year upon year pitifully. And yet, year upon year upon year, the state is encouraging the pitifulness. It is not that the state is removing what is wrong with this sector, what is ailing this sector. Let me give you a few examples and it'll be very clear. Let me further divide this into where we produce what we produce and what we produce. As far as where we produce what we produce in agriculture, 70 million hectares of Indian arable agricultural land, almost 40% of all Indian available agricultural land, 70 million hectares, has been severely damaged by floods or droughts in the last 6 years. 70 million hectares. 810,000 farmers have committed suicide in the last 10 years. Can you tell me any other sector where so many people involved have committed suicide? It is unfortunate if a suicide happens in any sector, but if it happens in an IT sector, the media talks about it for a week. If one suicide happens, here more than 1 lakh people have committed suicide because of apathy and loss, and nobody bats an eyelid. 82% of all farmers and cropland is not insured. That is the situation out here. 70 million tons of all what we produce goes to waste every year. 30% of all fruits and vegetables go waste every year because we do not have adequate storage. This is the reality of this sector. And as to how we produce it, India is the world's 2nd largest producer of sugarcane. Every year we produce 500 billion kilograms of sugarcane. Now sugarcane is a very water intensive crop. It requires only 9% of arable land, but 72% of all irrigation water. The amount of water that is required to grow 500 billion kilograms of sugarcane is 1 quadrillion liters. I didn't even know whether quadrillion existed. I thought things finished after trillion. But I have checked it out for you. Let me put it in perspective so that you would understand. 1 quadrillion liters is the amount of water that is present in 10 Ganga Sagar dams. That is the amount of drinking water, irrigable water, that we use to grow sugarcane. 500 billion kilograms. And sugar prices, they have reduced by half in the last 6 years. And yet, you would find every political party, every politician worth his and her salt, promising more and more of the MSP equivalent of sugarcane, proudly. That is the situation right now. We have our water availability per capita shrunk by 40% in the last 45 years, from 3,000 cubic meters to 1,230 cubic meters. The United Nations identifies 750 cubic meters as water availability required for civilized living. So we are officially uncivilized right now. 78% of all river water during monsoon goes waste into the ocean. 3,000 billion cubic feet of Godavari water, river water, during the monsoon goes waste into the ocean. What is the water requirement for the entire state of Tamil Nadu? 1,800 billion cubic feet. One politician said, this is unacceptable. We cannot grow sugarcane like this. That politician has, as it transpires, again become the chief minister of this state, Mr. Fadnavis. But when he was the first time chief minister, he brought in a law or a regulation where he said any farmer who wants to grow sugarcane would have to first take government permission. And that was a masterstroke, because you know what happens. Anybody wants to do anything, you want to prevent him, first thing you see, you take government permission. Within 3 months, he had to renege on that order. I would name the politician who forced him to renege on that order. We have given him Padma Vibhushan. But the fact of the matter is that politician ran liquor industry, and molasses is required for that liquor industry. That is a byproduct of sugarcane. This is how the role of the state was enacted. You forgot about the people. You forgot about the future of this country. You only remembered how you want sugarcane to help your industry grow. We've had a policy whereby we must link rivers. In fact, for the last 35 years, cutting across 3 governments, cutting across 3 Supreme Court benches, so many committees have deliberated and come to the conclusion that India requires 30 rivers to be linked. How else would you have flood-prone areas give water to the drought-prone areas? The fact of the matter is that till today, 35% of Indian agriculture is dependent upon the monsoon or the elements. 30 rivers to be linked. All of you in Maharashtra would remember 4 years ago we had extreme drought in Latur, and we had water trains plying to Latur. And politicians were proud, like I cut the ribbon, they were cutting ribbons proudly, launching water trains. It is one of the most shameful acts to be done. We should be linking rivers, not flagging off water trains. For 30 years this policy was in the offing. Supreme Court ordered the governments to link rivers. And the result, it is only last month that Prime Minister Modi laid the foundation stones of the first river link, Ken-Batwa link. What has been the state doing? It's not that the state has not been doing anything. We had the magnificent Narmada water dam, the whole complex. Right now, it gives water to 33 million houses. It powers 2 million households. It irrigates 2 million hectares of land. But the thing with Narmada Dam is that the foundation stones were laid by Nehru and it was inaugurated by Modi. One project takes us more than half a century to do. Is this how the state is going to act? Let us talk about what we produce now. India produces 4,000 kilograms of rice per hectare. That is almost half of what most other rice producing countries produce, even in the middle income economy. If you look at Cambodia, Vietnam, even China. In terms of maize, we produce 25% of what the maximum capacity per hectare is. And of what we produce, it is laced with poison. India consumes 60,000 tons of chemical pesticide. We're the second largest consumer. Every year, 30,000 Indians die of pesticide poisoning. Our export food refusal rate is one of the highest in the world, 7 times more than China. Nobody wants to buy the food that we produce. Forget about other countries. Even friendly states amongst each other, allies, don't want to buy each other food. Just a month ago, Karnataka refused rice from Punjab. You have cancer trains running daily from Punjab all the way to Rajasthan. Our water is polluted. Our air is polluted. And our land, it is polluted beyond measure. What are we doing about it? Precious nothing. That is about what we produce. Now let me come to the other aspect, which is equally important. 3 laws would have changed all this. The greatest reforms that were brought by anyone in living memory were brought by Prime Minister Modi when he brought in the 3 farm laws. What did the farm laws say? The farm laws said enough is enough. This country cannot afford 44% of its workforce working in a sector that is contributing pitifully and where no reform has taken place. The first was you would give farmers a choice so that they could sell their produce in government marketplaces, APMCs, or private marketplaces. That is the cornerstone of how a business is to be conducted. How would you feel as an entrepreneur if a product that you made, the government said, no, you cannot sell your product on Amazon. You can only sell it on a government website that works 10 minutes in 24 hours. You would sue that government, wouldn't you? But then when it came to farmers, we decided what was good for them. Why? It is because of listening Manoj Kumar songs, Mere Desh Ki Dharti Sona Ugle, Heere Ugle. We have exalted farmers to a demigod status. They are saying, no, we are not demigods or gods, we are businessmen. Allow us to do businesses like you do businesses. That was the first law. And the tragedy of these farm laws was that verbatim, these 3 farm laws were verbatim in the election manifestos of each and every opposition party that opposed these laws as soon as Modi brought them. As soon as Modi brought them, they suddenly became black laws. Dharnas were there, highways were blocked, people died, parliament came to a standstill. There were protests erupted all around. Everything came to a standstill. Why? Because Modi had implemented almost verbatim all the 3 farm laws that were there. What was the second one? To do away with the emergency provisions of the Essential Commodities Act. Now, as it happened, the bureaucratic speak was that suddenly, at the whim and fancy of a bureaucrat, you would change the word storage to hoarding. And suddenly you would have a non-bailable warrant against the farmer or the producer who was storing that thing to go down. And as a result, no businessman or businesswoman worth his or her salt were prepared to make these 24/7 state-of-the-art godowns to store perishable materials. You've seen every year how farmers download or throw up all these their agricultural perishable produce onto the streets. Bhindi, aloo, tomato, even milk is poured onto the streets because you can't store it. And I'll come to the storage calamity later, because as it transpires, India produces 320 million tons of food grains and our product storage capacity is 145 million tons. Half of what we produce, we cannot even store. And the Essential Commodities Act was the one that was stopping people from making these godowns. That was the second. What was the third law? The third law was that any businessman should be able to approach a farmer to say, well, don't grow rice, don't grow wheat, for which you don't get any money for growing. In fact, you run into losses. I will tell you what to grow. That again is the cornerstone of how a business is conducted. So you would have contract farming. And the tragedy was that it was not only in the election manifesto of, for example, the opposition parties that protested it. Opposition parties like Congress had already enacted this law of contract farming in the states that were governed by it. In erstwhile Congress state-run Punjab, Amrinder Singh already had a contract farming act. The same people that he calls corrupt, Adani and Ambani, were given 3,500 crores by the Punjab Congress government to actually come and do contract farming. But as soon as Modi brought this, all hell broke loose. But as I said, it's not about politicians. The darkest day of independent Indian modern history was when Mr. Modi reneged on those 3 laws and repealed them. That was the darkest day. But more dark than that was not that politician reneged on his or her promise of prosperity for farmers. The thing about politicians is, if you were to do a blood test, more than cholesterol, you'll get hypocrisy in there. So they are used to making a U-turn. What irked me, what saddened me, was that one arm of democracy on which all hopes, all eyes were fixed on, judiciary, that let us down. Because the day the Supreme Court asked, all we see around are the farmers who are protesting, who are against the farm laws. Where are the farmers who are for the farm laws? So in a sense, the Supreme Court wanted 250 million farmers who were doing what they should be doing, producing our produce in far-flung areas of Telangana, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Odisha, to drop whatever they were doing, hop onto the nearest bullock cart or a train or a bus, come to Tilak Marg and stand outside Supreme Court and say, my lord, we are for the farm laws. Is that how a democracy is supposed to work? No. That is how an anarchy is supposed to work. And that is the reason why we are where we are, because the role of the state was to transform this sector And all what the state has done is to lead us deeper and deeper into this abyss through which there is little escape. Let me give you another example so that it exemplifies what the role of the state is and how confused we are. One city, Paris, just one city, attracts 25 million tourists a year. One country, India, attracts 11.5 million tourists. One city, Paris, 25 million. One country, India, 1400 million people, 11.5. Only 30 million Indians are directly employed in tourism. It should be 5 times that. Tourism as a sector contributes only 2.5% to our GDP. It should be 5 times that. We have an 8,000-year-old continuous culture. We have hundreds of cuisines, dialects. We are a showcase to the world. We have beaches, we have oceans, we have deserts, we have snow-capped mountains. We are the pride seen ashore to show this country. We have 44 World Heritage Sites, and yet we attract only 11.5 million tourists. Greece has half those World Heritage Sites, and yet a small country like Greece attracts 3 times as many foreign tourists as we do. UAE, a small country like UAE, has more hotel rooms than India does. China has 100 times more hotel rooms than India does. When you talk about how many tourists you attract, we talk about Sun Temple at Peru that has 101.5 million tourists visiting. Sun Temple at Konark, 9,000 tourists visit. Sun Temple at Peru, 1.5 million. At Konark, 9,000. Bodh Gaya should be the Vatican of the East. People would be falling over each other. Countries like South Korea, like China, like Japan. Let us develop, let us make Bodh Gaya as the center of Buddhism, as the Vatican of the East. We have a Buddhist population, worldwide Buddhist population of 535 million. They would love to come to the most sacrosanct, hallowed place that there is for Buddhists. But the annual municipal budget of Bodh Gaya Municipal Corporation is less than the production budget of the failed movie Adipurush, 500 crores. Bodhi tree under which Lord Buddha attained nirvana, enlightenment, is visited by 0.25 million tourists. The worldwide Buddhist population, 535 million. How many visited the most sacrosanct place for Buddhists? 0.25 million. It's not that we haven't thought about this. We need to change this. In 2014, 2015, Narendra Modi brought in the skill policy, Skill India policy, because without skilling, and the fact remains there is a 60% gap between supply and demand as far as labor sector for tourism is concerned. 60% gap. This is the lowest hanging fruit. But rather than pluck it, we are watching it rot. So the Prime Minister said, we are going to have a Skill India policy. We need to skill people. And that is important. So the target that was set was by 2022, we will skill 400 million Indians. 2022 came and went. How many did we manage to skill? 14 million. Target was 400 million. We skilled 14 million. And it's not that we don't realize what went wrong. We have also an apprenticeship act going back to the Nehruvian days, 1961, because without an apprentice, skilling is also difficult. But out of a 600 million strong Indian labor force, we have only 0.5 million apprentices. This is a situation in a sector where we need flexibility, adaptability. It is the lowest hanging fruit, as I said. But what is the state doing? I'll tell you what the state is doing. The state is running 495 hotels. Almost all of them are loss-making. And the only time they make revenue is when they have to ferry politicians from one part to the other, so that you have these resort politics to save them from being bought over by the other. That is the only time they are making money. This is the reality of the situation. We need to change that. The state needs to change that. Let me come to the second aspect of it when I talked about the 4 parameters, having talked about inducing flexibility and adaptability in a workforce. Well, the second one is we must have a wiser workforce. Of course, if we have a more educated workforce, the state would be able to employ them much more. New people, wealth creator would be able to. Where do we stand there? There are right now 19% of all school teacher positions are lying vacant in the country. We have a school teacher shortfall of 1.1 million teachers. 8% of all Indian schools are single teacher schools. There is a 21% dropout rate in Indian schools after high school. There is a teacher to pupil ratio of 1:60 in some states. 40% of all rural schools do not have a functional toilet. No wonder parents don't want to send their children there. The fact of the matter is 44% of all Indian high school students cannot do a simple subtraction addition sum. 52% of all Indian high school students cannot string up a sentence in English. This is the reality of our Indian schools. Does it become better when we graduate to universities? Maybe it does. All those tens, hundreds of millions of school students who have to learn more. We have only 1,100 universities. None of those universities, leave alone the fact that there is only 25% gross enrollment ratio. None of those universities figure in the top 200 universities of the world in any metric that is used. And the other aspect is when you graduate through those universities, 53% of all Indian graduates are unemployable. Let me repeat, unemployable, not unemployed. They are unemployable. They don't have the requisite skills. The Indian state itself has shut down 800 engineering colleges and universities because the Indian state feels they're not good enough to be universities. 80% of all engineering Indian graduates are unemployable. 80%. In 30 years ago, 33% of all people who were unemployed were educated. Today it is 66%. That is the reality when it comes to a wiser workforce. I'm afraid somewhere along the line we have to agree that we missed the bus. And I'll tell you why. Because we are still concerned about making brick and mortar schools, brick and mortar universities. Well, I'm a child of the 70s and the 80s. I remember how difficult it was to get a phone connection. One would have to wait for years. Then you would get that rotary phone. Youngsters might not even know what that rotary phone is, would come in Bakelite and We had only 1.1 million landline connections. We had 750 million population. And we thought no way would every Indian get access to telephone. But right now, there are more phones than there are Indians. How did that happen? That happened because what is called leapfrogging technology. India advanced not because of technology, but because of leapfrogging technology. Landlines were discarded because mobile technology came. Likewise, somewhere we missed the bus. We still believe we need to educate our younger generation only through brick and mortar universities. COVID taught us this lesson. It was showing us the way. E-learning is the only way forward. There is no way we would be able to teach our youngsters, our school children, our university graduates and undergraduates through brick and mortar things. We have to have e-learning. We have to make it sufficiently intelligible, sufficiently enticing for them to learn through that mechanism. That is what leapfrogging does. And that is where we believe, I believe at least, that we missed the bus. Let us come to the third aspect of what the state's role should be. Of course, you have a more prosperous, more wealthier workforce. Everyone wants to have a wealthier workforce. The more prosperous your workforce is, the faster you will go towards a developed country. And to be honest with you, that's one of the things that endeared me to our Prime Minister, because in 2013 he said something remarkable. And he said, and I'm quoting him verbatim, he said, a government has no business to be in business. And I said, finally, here is a politician who realizes the truth. That the state cannot run a business. A government cannot run a business. Any government that has run a business, that government has been demolished, that business has been demolished, and that state in which that business was has been demolished. We only have to learn from history to not repeat the mistakes that the history has taught us never to. Soviet Union, Venezuela, Cuba, everything, all the socialist countries. The job of the government is not to run a business. And I said, thank you for saying this. He repeated it in 2017 and again in 2020. But I'm afraid in the last 11 years, all what his government has done is to be in the business of running businesses. Right now, we have 1,830 public sector units. 400 of them are non-functional. They're not producing anything they're supposed to be producing. And they are leeching tens of thousands of crores from us, the taxpayer. 21% of our annual allocated budget that Ms. Sitaraman allocates every year, she did a month ago, of 45 lakh crores, 21%, 9.5 lakh crores goes in propping up these public sector units. What is the government doing? Making mixer grinders, making calculators, making scooters, making computers and calculators. That is not the government's role. And right now they want to run taxis as well. They're running hotels. Why? Why is the government giving 3 lakh capital infusion every couple of years to BSNL, telephony company, when we have the great coverage done by private companies as far as telephony is concerned? Why is the government running loss-making public sector banks? One of the, again, the next darkest day in our independent history was when in 1969, Indira Gandhi nationalized our banks. One of the darkest days. The Supreme Court overturned her judgment. And what did she do? She overturned the Supreme Court judgment. And from that day when the banks were nationalized, all we have seen is that the politicians are using those very public sector banks as cash cows. On their whims and fancies, they give loans to whoever their friends and politicians and cronies are. That is why our modern day heroes are Vijay Mallya's and Nirav Modi's and God knows how many other people. The reason for that is that the cash cows that are being used by the public sector banks and the politicians. 88,000 crores has been lost in the last 5 years by 33,000 cases of frauds. The NPAs of public sector banks in the last 10 years total 10.9 lakh crores. The government has written off that. It's a sleight of hand. They haven't waving off and written off something. But the fact is only 1.6 lakh crores has returned to the government. We have as good as said goodbye to 9 lakh crores. Why is the government doing this? Is that the role of the state? No, that isn't. And if this is the public sector unit, the privatization has been zero except for Air India. Thank God. I mean, I'm an atheist, but I believe in God when at least Air India was privatized. It has run a loss of 70,000 crores. But in the last 11 years, that has been the only privatization. There is no other privatization. And disinvestment, yes, it has happened. But look at the sleight of hand. Whatever is disinvested from a public sector unit, another public sector unit is forced to buy it. LIC must be thinking, yaar, hum hi kyun pakad lete ho baar baar? You are disinvesting Coal India, hum kyun kharide? It's like switching the family junk silver from one pocket to the other. But if this is the situation as to what the role of the state is in public sector, is it any better in the private sector? Has the state at least unshackled us, the people who are wealth generators? Well, let me give you a reality. An MSME that on average employs 150 people spends an average of 18 lakhs per year in filing compliances. This is the reality of private sector. There are 69,000 compliances. 69,000. 6,800 filings have to be done a year. And I've calculated it with working days. That means one filing every hour. So by the time this talk finishes, some of you who own factories would have missed a filing and are liable to be arrested. We are still governed in many aspects by the draconian 1948 Factories Act, where it is true, if in your factory you don't have a spittoon, you can be arrested. So please, I implore you, all of you, some of you running factories, please at least have a spittoon in your factories. You have the 5 most biggest contributors to our GDP. The states, Gujarat, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Uttar Pradesh, have as many as 1,000 clauses, imprisonment clauses for businesses who play truant. The truant word being subjected on the whims and fancies of the bureaucrat and the state. This is the situation of this country as well as private sector is concerned. What is the role of the state? The state is happily running loss-making PSUs, happily running hotels, happily making mixer grinders, making bicycles, making scooters, and now going to ply taxis. Let me come to the final aspect of what the role of the state is, to create a healthier workforce. Well, of course, as the adage goes, health is wealth. If you don't have a healthier workforce, none of it is possible. You don't have people who are fit enough, who are robust enough, strong enough to work, you can't have any work. Where do we stand there? And to be honest with you, in here, as I exemplified, starting with what was our condition 75 years ago, we have made considerable progress in this department as far as health is concerned. Yes, we have. But here is the conundrum, here is the dilemma. When you're talking about Viksit Bharat, when you're talking about the future or attaining Viksit Bharat by 2047, you're not concerned about the health of your workforce at present or what it was in the near past. You are concerned about the future. What is the health of the workforce going to be in the next 5 years, in the next 10, 15, 20 years? Because health cannot be ascertained as for the health of the nation which is at present. When you're talking of 2047, you have to first talk of 2037, 2035. Where do we stand there? And there, I must say, the Indian Council of Medical Research brought out very revealing 2 pie charts. They wanted to find out what were the kind of diseases that afflict Indians in 1990 and that afflict Indians now. So in a sense, they wanted to find out pre-economic liberalization, pre the prosperity that we have, the kind of diseases. And they found out that in 1990, 70% of the diseases that afflicted Indians were communicable diseases, like tuberculosis, malaria, vector-borne diseases, contaminated water, tuberculosis, cholera, I mentioned. You had viral diseases. Because we were poor, we lived in stifling conditions, we had contaminated water, contaminated air. Only 30% of the diseases that afflicted us were non-communicable diseases, like heart ailments, cancer. We had diabetes, for example, asthma. And the situation now, 30 years later, with coming prosperity, the pie chart has totally flipped. Now 70% of the diseases that afflict Indians are non-communicable diseases. And only 30% are communicable diseases like malaria and tuberculosis, and they are going down, dropping even sharply. And I suspect it would go down to even 5 to 10%. In fact, there are malaria tuberculosis eradication mission. For example, in 1990, as many as 15 million Indians contracted malaria. Right now it is 2 million. In 1990, 1.7 million Indians died of tuberculosis. Now it is quarter of that. So yes, we would gain sufficient independence from communicable diseases as we go forward. But as we grow forward, what is the situation as far as the affliction of disease is concerned? The burden is almost entirely on non-communicable diseases. India is right now the world hub for asthma. India is right now, 80% of all the under 50 cancer cases right now are in India. It is the world hub for heart ailments. This is the situation right now. And as far as diabetes is concerned, I'll come to that a minute later. 250 million Indians right now are clinically obese. Do you remember in the 1950s and 60s that famous proverb goes, in the West, the mother is castigating the child, eat this, because there is one hungry Indian child in India. Right now, 250 million Indians are clinically obese. With increasing prosperity and wealth, this is what has been the reason of our health problem. 320 million Indians have blood pressure issues. 150 million Indians right now, I'm talking about Lancet report of a year ago, 150 million Indians are pre-diabetic. That is more than the combined population of UK and France. 100 million Indians are confirmed diabetic. 10% of our population. It is not that a tsunami is going to come and strike us. I'm sorry, we were found standing here, the tsunami came. It has gone beyond us. We don't even realize this, that 10% of this room is confirmed diabetic. This is what are we concerned with? What is the state doing? Where is that $1 million trillion anti-diabetic, anti-heart ailment, anti-cancer drug? This is what our population is going to ask the state, and the state would be left wanting. Let me take another show of hands to exemplify this. How many of you know who Lakshmi Kutti is? Lakshmi Kutti. Okay, not a single hand has gone up. 6 months ago, I was in the same boat. Even I didn't know who Lakshmi Kutti is. Let me tell you who Lakshmi Kutti is. Lakshmi Kutti is an 85-year-old frail woman who has dwelt all her life in the forests of Western Ghats. For 60 years of those 85 years, Lakshmi Kutti has been collecting medicinal plants and herbs from the forest. She has a cornucopia or a library of 500 medicinal plants that she uses to treat the tribals there. And in recognition of her exemplary service, the state decided to give her Padma Shri 4 years ago. So Lakshmi Kutti came to Rashtrapati Bhavan and she was taken in so much by the opulence. She said, this is not for me, came bare feet. She returned to her forest. We should be having 100 Lakshmi Kutti natural product institutes. We should be finding out the single molecules that are there in each of the Lakshmi Kutti's 500 plants. Who knows? One amongst them could be a multi-billion trillion dollar anti-diabetic drug, anti-cancer drug, anti-asthma drug, anti-heart ailment drug. One of those. But if you believe that this is a figment of my imagination, that the state has no role to play in here? Let me take another show of hands. How many of you know who 2UU is? 2UU. Okay, again, not a single hand has gone up, 6 months. Okay, one hand has gone up. That doesn't count because Amit reads a lot. 2UU, just like Lakshmi Kutti, is a frail 85-year-old woman, except that she's Chinese. But just like Lakshmi Kutti, she's dwelled all her life in the forests in China. And just like Lakshmi Kutti, she's been collecting these medicinal plants, hundreds of them. But unlike Lakshmi Kutti, 2UU investigated the active ingredient of one of her herbs. And that active molecule is right now the only viable drug to cure malaria, artemisinin. And for that, 2UU got the Nobel Prize of Medicine. And you know what's going to happen? Couple of years from now, some lab in Nordic country, Sweden, will descend down to the Western Ghats, request Lakshmi Kutti for her library of medicines. And Lakshmi Kutti, being what she is, so kind and affable, she'll take it all. And the Swedes would take it back to their labs and isolate the active multi-billion, trillion-dollar anti-diabetic drug for which they would get the Nobel Prize. And at the Nobel Prize ceremony, they would thank Lakshmi Kutti and we would be so proud of it, we would give her Bharat Ratna. Is that what our role should be? That is the situation. Far from creating a wealthier, healthier, more prosperous, more adaptable, more wiser workforce, the state, whatever it is creating, is using that workforce. But ladies and gentlemen, if this is a confusion that I have elucidated that runs amok in the state, let us not escape the blame as well, because the next whatever time I have left, I want to concentrate on the confusion that envelops us as a people. Because that is, if not as important, possibly more important than the confusion that shrouds the state. Now, here, let me tell you that I am all for a welfare state. If India was not a welfare state, we would have wiped out tens, hundreds of millions of our people. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants a 50,000 GDP per capita of a gated community and the rest of 1,400 million people living on $2,500 as a GDP per capita. Nobody wants an island of prosperity in an ocean of despair. All of us wants to grow together. We want this healthier, wealthier, wiser workforce to be created. And only welfare can do that. Welfare is crucial for us. If Modi had not made 120 million toilets, did you know that every new toilet made has saved that household upwards of 50,000 rupees in health costs alone? And it transpired 6 months ago that it is saving more than 1 lakh infants certain life, escape from certain deaths because of those toilets, because they can escape those diseases. If Modi had not given 100 million Ujjwala gas connections, did you know, in fact, I didn't know this, that the biggest reason for infant mortality in India is not some disease. It is household pollution. It is when mothers are cooking, blowing that pipe into that chula. That is the reason. 100 million gas connections have saved 150,000 lives every year. If Modi had not supplied 110 million tap water connections, did you know in the last 5 years, diarrheal deaths under 5 have been slashed by half? Welfare is crucial. 600 million Jan Dhan accounts to give economic upliftment, 430 million Mudra loans, 380 million Ayushman health cards, 70 million of Indian population treated, more than the population of UK already treated using those health cards. It is crucial. It allows us to survive, allows us to thrive, to make us healthier, wealthier, wiser. That is the part and parcel of growing together. Welfare is crucial. And the biggest achievement since we attained independence, according to me, was that 1 billion Indians were vaccinated twice over within a year. That is what welfare can achieve. So welfare is important. But the fact of the matter is, welfare is only possible in a capitalist state. Socialism is not possible in a socialist economy. You need to generate that money in order for you to then distribute it, spend it. And that is the reason right now I am all for welfare. But the point is, where we are going right now, we have blurred that line between what is welfarism and what is freebieism. And unless we as citizens understand what is welfare and what is freebie, forget about 2047, we're not even looking at 2097 India being developed. And I'll tell you why. Because I like to take a show of hands, even though I might be sounding a bit patronizing out here. How many amongst you love your families? Please raise your hands. Of course, all the hands have gone up. Thank you very much for that. How many of your families are in debt? Okay, not a single hand has gone up, right? Again, at the risk of sounding patronizing, let me ask you another question. How many of you love India? Please raise your hands. All the hands, that hand hasn't gone. You're not communist by any chance, are you? You're not from JNU, are you? So all of you love your families. None of your families are in debt. All of you love India. Then why the hell are you so comfortable with India under a debt of 260 lakh crores? How can you sleep at night when you know that the states have ratcheted up a cumulative debt of 85 lakh crores? Why are you as citizens not bothered about it? This is the situation we are facing. We are facing a certain calamity if we do not draw this line between what is freebism and what is welfareism. And it's not that easy to draw that line, let me warn you. Because for a politician, everything is welfareism. Every freebism, he'll say, well, this is welfareism. How dare you come and say this is freebism? And sometimes it is quite difficult, especially for middle class and people of our socio-economic strata. Because people who pay indirect taxes, when they are given a subsidy of 1,500 rupees per month, the poor people, we immediately say that is freebism. But when Nirmala Sitharaman cuts your tax slabs, you never think of it as freebism, do you? You think of it as growth in the economy. So money in your pocket is not freebism, it is welfareism. But money in somebody else's pocket is freebism. I'm just trying to tell you that might be 19 or 20, as they say, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. But it's not that easy to draw that line. Every citizen has to draw that line. I myself have tried to draw that line, and let me help you out in there, at least tell you what my line is. What do I mean by these definitions of what freebism and welfareism is? According to me, welfareism is spending taxpayers' money in national interest, as I've already delineated the kind of healthier, wealthier, wiser workforce. And according to me, freebism is spending taxpayers' money against national interests. So welfareism is pro-national and freebism is anti-national. Let me give you a few examples of what I believe is freebism, so it will be very clear to you. Because this is really a confusion that shrouds us. Every political party, when it goes for elections, promises that it will send the senior citizens of its state onto free pilgrimage. Why, bhai? Kyo? Why are you sending people off to pilgrimage at our expense? Erstwhile, Aam Aadmi Party, Kejriwal promised Delhi citizens free trip to Dwarka. You had Samajwadi Party, free trip to Ajmer. Tens of lakhs of people go to, for example, you had BJT promising to Jagannath Puri, Congress to Meenakshi Madurai Temple, and BJP is also not immune to it. In Nagaland, BJP promised its senior citizen free trip to Jerusalem. अयोध्या छोड़ो कह रहे हैं जेरूसलम ले जाएंगे. लोगों को पता नहीं था जेरूसलम कहाँ है. Why? This is our money. And you are using it for anti-national purposes, for placating your vote bank, for appeasement. This is anti-national because this is not in national interest. This is in your interest, politicians' interest. This is in political parties' interest. Why do we still have Hajj subsidies? Why do we still have interest-free loans to set up shops on Waqf land? Why does the state still spend lakhs of crores in giving monthly salaries to imams and maulvis? This is your money, our money. And we don't even realize that this is a freebie. We turn a blind eye. Let me give you another example to illustrate what freebieism is. In the last 10 years, the central government has spent 8,000 crores in government ads. When Kejriwal was governing Delhi, in the last 3 years, the Kejriwal government spent 1,200 crores on government ads. This is our money, they're burning it to wish each other, each politician, I scratch your back, you scratch mine, psycho-fancy, nepotism, those huge center spread, whole mug ads of politicians wishing each other happy birthday or wishing somebody happy Children's Day or Mahatma Mohandas Gandhi anniversary. Why? And these are just two governments. You have 30 governments. Lakhs of crores of our money is spent by these governments, state governments, on placating their vote bank, in ensuring that their false promises or whatever their false deeds are exhibited to the people. You turn a blind eye, you don't even realize. You turn the paper, nobody reads those ads. but that's your money being burned, and we don't even realize the damage it is doing. On the layer of it, yes, it is important to realize it, but you know what it is doing? By doing this, wasting your lakhs of crores, the government is buying out another arm of the democracy. It is bribing the media. By these tens of thousands of crores is being given to the media. Now, you know, media runs all these moral and ethical campaigns all the time for citizens. When was the last time you saw a media run a campaign against government ads? Never. I have never seen it. Because those guys earn tens of thousands of crores from it. They fight like cats and dogs for that money. And the government dictates, it turns on and off the tap of these thousands of crores whenever it wants the news to be printed or news not to be printed. This is, if ever there was an electoral interference when you talk about this phrase, this is what freebie is. Let me give another example. In 2005, celebrated economist, the late Dr. Manmohan Singh, of course, and Dr. Montague Singh Ahluwalia said, this nation will go bankrupt in the way it is going. We can no longer afford to give the pensions the way we are giving. In 1980, 2% of our revenue was being used for pensions. Right now, it is 10 times that. In 2005, they said. So, 10 times that, 20%. So we have to develop a new policy. They came up with NPS, whereby for giving pensions, you would have 10% of the employee contribution. I think it was 14% government contribution, as opposed to what is now called the old pension scheme, where you drew 50% of the last drawn salary and it was tax-free. And sooner or later, every central government and every state government started adopting that. Until in 2022, another celebrated economist, Rahul Gandhi, he went to, please don't laugh, of course, he's very celebrated. He went to Himachal and he told the Himachalis, if you vote for Congress, I will junk the scheme that my party brought, NPS, and I will revert to the OPS. In other words, I will disregard what economists Dr. Manmohan Singh and Montague Singh Ahluwalia Congresses did. And I will revert to something that was going to bankrupt us. Himachal had 1.3 lakh government employees, 1.6 lakh pensioners. Congress won. And it wasn't Modi who coined the term revdi. It was Congressman Montague Singh Ahluwalia who got up and said, don't do this. You will go bankrupt. Reverting to OPS is the biggest revdi of all. This is, I'm quoting him verbatim. Nobody heard. The RBI governor said, don't do this. You are going to spend 5 times the amount on OPS as you are on NPS. You will go bankrupt. They didn't hear. Until 6 months ago, the Chief Minister of Himachal got up in the assembly and said, we don't have money to pay salaries to our MLAs. They even mortgaged the Himachal Bhavan in Delhi. They were ready to tax if a family had second toilet. 77% of Himachal's tax revenue is not going up in propping up this scheme. A small state like Himachal has a debt of 98 lakh crores. But the tragedy is not just Himachal, because we did not remove this confusion, because we made this government win in Himachal. Every state had a domino effect. Punjab reverted to OPS. Chhattisgarh reverted to OPS. Even in BJP-ruled states, there were lakhs of people pouring onto the streets demanding OPS. Every year, we cumulatively spend 5 lakh crores in OPS and these pension schemes. This is an abyss through which it seems inescapable. But the confusion is not on the state's mind. The state gave us a choice. The confusion is in our mind. And let me end by giving you the mother of all freebies. It is the minimum support price. Now, you may find it shocking, but if at all there is one thing that is a sure shot recipe for a disaster, forget about, as I said, 2047, even 2147 doesn't seem likely if we hold on to the minimum support price. This was a relic of the Soviet Union era, when, yes, understandably, we had 80 million tons of food grains that we produced. Right now, we produce 4 times that, 320 million. But because the state government, the central governments keep on procuring more and more and more of the same food grains, the farmers are making more and more and more of the same food grains. We have 320 million tons of food grains. We have a storage capacity of only 145 million tons. It is a parliament mandate that we cannot have a maximum buffer limit exceeding 41 million tons. It hovers around 25 to 26 million tons. 2 years ago, we had 100 million tons. 60 million tons over and above what our maximum buffer capacity is. In fact, when COVID struck, we could not distribute 8 million tons of food grains because rats had eaten it. It was categorized as unedible. We had to import food grain from Ukraine and Russia. This is the situation. And yet, every year, we had the politician promising more and more and more of the MSP. In fact, it was Rahul Gandhi who's demanding MSP on every grown crop. And the BJP rightly said that is absolutely unacceptable. We will go bankrupt. We already spent 9 lakh crores in propping up PSUs out of 45 lakh crores. If we were to promise MSP on every grown agricultural crops, it would cost the exchequer upwards of 16 to 20 lakh crores every year. It is unacceptable. They mocked this, rightly. But then came Haryana elections. And what did BJP do? BJP promised every Haryana farmer MSP on every grown crop. And what happened? BJP won. You remember Rahul Gandhi's Khatakat scheme, where he promised 1 lakh to every eligible woman. BJP rightly mocked it. But then came Maharashtra election. What did BJP do? They didn't just promise. They implemented 1,500 rupees per month to every Maharashtrian eligible woman aged 21 to 60, costing the exchequer 51,000 crores every year. And the then incumbent Chief Minister, Mr. Shinde, said, if you elect me to power, I will double it, costing the exchequer 1 lakh crores. Do you know about the debt of Himachal? You know about the debt of Punjab? You know what is Maharashtra's debt? 8 lakh crores. Who is going to pay for this? We are not America, ladies and gentlemen. America right now has a debt of $38 trillion. They don't mind. It might as well be $50 trillion. They'll keep on printing money, chopper money. We can't afford that luxury. Somebody has to pay for this. And you know, when some of you applauded when I said 10 years ago we had 350 startups, now we have 118,000, those guys will be taxed. Those startups will be paying for this. Tax will increase on them, corporate taxes, somebody has to pay for this. Otherwise, we are going to be another Venezuela. The situation with MSP is that no politician has the guts to stop placating the farmers and this small vote bank. We've seen it every single time. Every year the state is paying 3 lakh crores in procuring more and more of this that we don't need. In fact, ICAIR committed a study where they found out in the last 16 years, farmers have lost to the tune of 45 lakh crores for faulty agricultural produce pricing, including MSP. 62% of the farmers want to set their own price of the produce. Government doesn't allow it. This is the naked situation of MSP. And if you think this is an issue that affects the farmers, it doesn't affect us, think again. It is not only affecting you financially, it is actually killing you. You don't believe me? Let me give you an example. You see, with the guarantee of MSP, almost like a sarkari naukri, the farmers started producing more and more and more of what was guaranteed, because that is sheer economics. So they started growing more and more of rice, which is immensely water-guzzling crop. And as a result, the water table of Punjab and Haryana went down alarmingly. And for once, the politicians were alarmed. And they set out a law. And the law said you cannot sow rice unless it coincides with the onset of monsoon. And correspondingly, the harvesting of rice was also delayed. So right now, it coincides with winter. Now, last November, the air quality index of Delhi was 999. The acceptable air quality index should be 30 to 50. And it was only 9, I am from Delhi, it was only 999 because the meter only has 3 digits. Maybe it was 4,000, 5,000. Why? Because the farmers of Punjab and UP and Haryana were burning 30 million tons of rice stubble to have a turnover so that they can grow another crop. Let me give you an assessment. Every year, an average of 50,000 to 60,000 farmlands are burnt with the onset of winter. Burnt. An area of 17,900 square kilometers is on fire. 12 times the size of Delhi, right next to Delhi, every day for a month. This is the reality. All over India, 98 million tons of rice stubble is burnt. The amount of carbon dioxide emitted through this is 149 million tons. The amount of carbon dioxide emitted through all Indian transport, 240 million tons. Just by something which is totally avoidable, we are contributing 149 million tons of carbon dioxide. We are spending right now 150 times more on curing respiratory diseases resulting from rice stubble burning than had we procured those happy seeder machines that would take out this rice stubble in an eco-friendly way. The amount required for that, $70 million, that's all. And the ad budget of the governments of Punjab, Haryana and the central government, $1,300 million. That is why I say we were a banana republic ever since we became a republic. But ladies and gentlemen, हमें तो banana republic से republic बनाना है. If we ourselves do not remove this confusion that shrouds us, that shrouds the state, how on earth are we going to go from hopping on from the treadmill to the travelator? I shall end there. Thank you so much.